Thank you so much for the invitation by Napa. The name Napa has very good souvenirs for me because I lived 5 years in Silicon Valley. I could go to drink wine in Napa Valley in California. Also, it is really a pleasure for me to be back in Belgrade. The first time I came here was 40 years ago. I was working at the United Nations city in Vienna. I was working with UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and I first wanted to come to Yugoslavia because it was the most open country in the Soviet sphere. So I came to Yugoslavia and also to Hungary, which were, as I said, the two most open countries at the time. And I have been coming back many times to the former Yugoslavia, and I even worked in Montenegro. I worked in the dollarization process in Montenegro in the year 1999 and 2000. So I love this region. I have been here. I have visited the fantastic Tesla Museum. I think Tesla was a genius. And as an engineer myself, this is an honor to be back here in Belgrade. I work with different futurist organizations, and as I mentioned, I am an engineer from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I used to work in energy, but now I have moved into something more interesting, which is biotechnology, because this is one of the growing fastest areas in the whole planet. I also coordinate with the Millennium Project, which began as the futuristic part of the United Nations University, the group for Spain and Latin America. We have worked on the global challenges, and we publish every year a report about the future. I have a copy for you of this report. You can also download it for free in our website. In this report about the year 2050, we have 3 scenarios about the future on work and technology. And we presented this at the United Nations General Assembly a couple of years ago when we were working on this. So this is a very good reference so that you see what might happen in the future. And we have 3 scenarios, from very good to very bad. Also, I have been working on scenarios about other parts of the world, like Latin America, where I grew up. I grew up in Latin America. I presented this report also at the World Economic Forum to talk about what is the future of Latin America. And I have been working on technology, but especially on an idea called the singularity. The singularity has been popularized by a friend also from MIT, Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil wrote a fantastic book in the year 2005 about the technological advances that are going to happen in the future, because technology keeps on improving exponentially, and computers are getting faster, better, and cheaper continuously, and this will not stop in the next 20 years. So this is the idea of the singularity. I am one of the founding faculty of Singularity University in Silicon Valley in 2009 at NASA Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley, supported mostly by Google. And as I mentioned, I could go and drink in Napa Valley some good wine. And we talk about these exponential technologies that are changing everything. One of the big changes because of technology is that we will become immortal by the year 2045. As you can read even in Time magazine, the year man becomes immortal. But for ladies here, don't worry. Women also will become immortal. All of us, if you want, we will be able to rejuvenate, as I will explain later. Technologies are changing exponentially faster, smaller, cheaper, and better. And this is not stopping in the next 2 to 3 decades. Even the economy is beginning to grow exponentially, which is really interesting. Until the 18th century, we were living in what was called the Malthusian trap. You know, Malthus, who said that the world was overpopulated and it was the end of the world because London had 1 million people and the United Kingdom had 10 million. He said, it's the end of the planet. We have too many people. We don't have resources. And it was so at the time because we did not have technology. In fact, even agriculture was very primitive. We didn't have machines for agriculture. So we were caught into the Malthusian trap. But then the Industrial Revolution began. Technology began changing the world. And for the first time in the 19th century, humanity grew 100%. This was incredible, 100% growth of the economy. But then on the 20th century, it was 400%. And in this century, it might be 5,000%. We have seen nothing yet of the incredible development and advances thanks to technology. As I mentioned, this began at the United Kingdom during the Industrial Revolution. The UK was the first country in human history that doubled its income per capita. And it took 58 years for the first time in human history to double its income per capita. Then other countries, USA, Japan, etc., etc. Now China is doubling its income per capita every 8-9 years. And India is coming up. India now says that they plan to double its income per capita every 10 years. And even some African countries. This is incredible. The world has never seen so much prosperity. If you look actually at the economic evolution from the 18th century, when we were all poor throughout the whole planet, the average income per capita in the planet was $1,000 per person per year. $1,000. And then the Industrial Revolution began, and we passed $10,000, and we are reaching $100,000. This is only getting better, and look at it, this is exponential. If you look at the vertical scale, this is not linear, this is growing exponentially. On the other hand, even the stock market, this is the Dow Jones Index in New York. It is also growing exponentially with wars, with pandemics, with anything. The economy is growing exponentially. Even life expectancy, which is the most interesting thing. In the time of the Roman Empire, life expectancy was 25 years of age. How many of you have 24 or less? So all of us could be dead except for you, because we are over 25. But not only we are not dead, but we are living longer, better lives and healthier. So, and the most interesting thing is that you see what is growing the fastest is the red part, education. And this is why there will be more and more growth, because we are creating more, we are learning more, we are inventing more. When the time of the Roman Empire, we basically just slept and worked. We were like animals. But this is growing incredibly. Let me tell you the big difference between linear and exponential. If I give 30 linear steps, each one of 1 meter, after 30 steps, I have walked 30 meters. But if I give exponential steps and I double, after 30 doublings, I have walked over 1 billion meters, which is equivalent to going around the planet 26 times. How many of us understand that? We don't understand that because we think linearly, but technology is changing exponentially. So we have to realize that we are leaving behind the local and linear world of the past into the exponential and global world of the future. But some groups will oppose technology, even though technology is what has changed humanity. You probably know the Amish. The Amish left Europe, mostly England and the Netherlands, in the 18th century. And they took that technology to North America, and they are still living like that in the 18th century. They don't want technology of the 19th century or the 20th century. Isn't this stupid? What is special about the 18th century to keep it? Or if we go back even further in time, I grew up in Latin America. We have some Indians called Yanomami. These Aboriginal tribes, they don't want anything from today. They don't even want clothes, which is convenient sometimes not to have clothes, but they want to live like they lived 5,000 years ago. And I am pretty sure when the wheel was invented, also about 5,000 years ago, there were people who didn't want the wheel, the anti-wheel people. So there is always opposition to technology, even though technology is what improves the human condition. When the United Kingdom began the Industrial Revolution, there was a group called the Luddites. The Luddites destroyed the machines because they said the machines would take away our jobs. Fortunately, the machines won, and that is why we live in this advanced world, because we are using the machines, we are using technology. So technology is not the enemy, it's the helper of humanity. Actually, technology is so important that is what makes us different from animals. We are animals with technology. We are basically the only animals who use technology to improve our condition. So I want you to look at the world in a different way. This is the map we use mostly in the West. But this map is not right, even though some cows have that map even on their back. But this map is not right. If you go to China, and I lived 3 years in Japan, and I went a lot to China, this is how the Chinese look at the world. In fact, the name of China, if you don't know, means Middle Kingdom. The two Chinese characters, the first one is middle, the second one is kingdom. The Middle Kingdom. This is what China is. And 1 out of every 5 people is Chinese. So I tell my friends, don't have more than 4 children, because the 5th child will be Chinese. I don't tell this bad joke in China, but you understand, it's a statistical reality. Today, 1 out of every 5 people is Chinese, and they look at the world this way. So get accustomed also to this way of looking at the world, but everything is relative. If you live in Australia, you will look at the world upside down. Or if you live in Dubai, you will see the world islands like that. So I want you to look at the world with a new face to the world, and also a new behind, especially because in 10 years, we are going to have colonies on the moon and Mars. This is incredible, this is historic. And Elon Musk, who is doing this privately, without the government, without NASA behind, he plans to implement governance systems, different new governance systems on Mars in the year 2030. This will change the reality on our planet. Everything is changing quickly. You can see Uber is the biggest transportation company, and it doesn't own 1 taxi. Facebook is the biggest media company, and it doesn't have journalists, or Alibaba and Amazon, the biggest retailers in the planet. Airbnb have more hotel rooms than Marriott, Hilton, Sheraton, and they really don't own the rooms. Everything is being disrupted by technology. In fact, telecommunications was probably the beginning, but then transportation is being disrupted, manufacturing is being disrupted, food production, energy, media, education, health, and governance. Governance is also being totally disrupted. I was in the USA in 2016 presidential election, and IBM had an artificial intelligence called Watson, and they proposed Watson as one of the candidates for the election. Watson was a robot, an artificial intelligence. Actually, maybe the USA could have done better if Watson and not Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump were running for president. And this is coming. I will probably vote for a robot president instead of a human president. They might be more impartial, and they will certainly have much more information than any human can have. So this is coming, artificial intelligence for politicians, and e-governance. Estonia was the first country in the world that has moved into e-governance. And this is very easy to copy. Once they have done it, and with many mistakes, this can be improved because the world is globalized. So there is no excuse not to have the best e-governance in the planet. We can just see what they are doing in Estonia and many other places. And I go a lot to Dubai, where they created the World Government Summit. And this is Elon Musk talking about how the governments will change and how we will have new governance system on other planets. We don't need to have all this back history of how governance evolved here. We can create new governance systems. And my colleagues from the Millennium Project just came back from the World Summit of the Committees of the Future. The United Nations, together with the Interparliamentary Union, are working on creating committees of the future in every country, in the Senate, in the Parliament, in the Congress of every country. We presented a report on that, and now we will, the Millennium Project, we will be working at the Summit of the Future. The first Summit of the Future of the United Nations will be September 22nd and 23rd in New York before the General Assembly. And this first Summit of the Future will talk about artificial general intelligence and about longevity and the new things happening because of technology. AGI, artificial general intelligence, will be the most powerful tool we have had in history. It's like electricity, only much more powerful. It is like fire, but it will be everywhere to do anything. And this is coming, artificial general intelligence, in the next few years. At Singularity University, we say that the world is changing exponentially, and you need to Uber yourself before you get Kodak. So that you get the idea, we need to be disrupted ourselves, or someone else will disrupt us. I am a futurist, and futurists, we talk about 4 ways to look into the future. The worst way is to be passive, like an ostrich. Horrible. You hide your head in the ground. You don't want to see what is happening. I hope we don't have ostriches here, because ostriches are not from Serbia. But a little less bad is to be reactive, like a firefighter that comes when there is a fire. It is much better to be proactive when you buy insurance to be ready for the changes. But the best is to be proactive, because we can create the future. We can devise the scenarios from best to worst and avoid the baddest scenarios and go for the best scenarios, which I think is what NAPA is doing also. NAPA is trying to envision what could be a good scenario, and compare to other countries, compare to other programs, so that you don't need to reinvent from zero. You can just go from what works and make it better and make it local. So if we have ostriches, they should be technological ostriches, so that we can see what is going to happen in the future. I want to give you an example, because some of you probably have my age and you have used this primitive technology. This is called an IBM punch card. This was 1K of memory. This is 10 by 100. 10 by 100 is 1,000, so this is 1K of memory. This was horrible. I used this at MIT 40 years ago, 1K of memory. And then the first electromagnetic memories were invented, 8 inches and also 1K. But this 1K was better because you could erase this K. In Spanish, and I think in Serbian, the letter K is pronounced K. So I say we had 1K of mechanical memory and 1K of electromagnetic memory. And 1K makes 1 caca. 1 caca of memory. I used this at MIT, 1 caca, 40 years ago. Fortunately, we have moved from caca. I have the second types of memory. This was already 512 cacas. Then this one, which is 1.4 mega. And I have a pen drive here of 1 terabyte. We have gone from caca to terabytes in 40 years. What do you think we are going to see in the next 20 years? You will remember me, and you will remember caca. But this will be caca in 20 years. 1 terabyte will be caca. So get ready for this exponential future that is coming. So you can see this evolution that is not stopping. It is not stopping in the next 20 to 30 years. And this is happening in other fields, because people thought this was for computers. No, this is beginning to happen in biology, in medicine. The first human genome was sequenced from 1990 to 2003. It took 13 years and it cost $1 billion. Just the US government, $1 billion in 13 years. Today, in 2023, you can sequence a whole human genome, your whole human genome, for about $300 in a few days. And this is going to cost $10 and 1 minute in a few years, in 5 years. This is moving exponentially faster than caca. If you thought that this was incredible, what is happening in biology is more incredible, and it's happening even faster than with computers. I will show you the sequence of my genome, only the partial sequence. I have sequenced my genome fully and partially. I don't want you to know everything about me, so I'll show you the partial sequence with companies like 23andMe. That's me, Jose Cordeiro. Once you sequence your genome, and I guarantee all of you will have done it in 5 years when it costs $10, you will know the diseases you will have. You will know if you will die of cancer. What is the probability you will have cancer or any disease? Isn't this fantastic to know what you will die of? So that you don't die of it, because the medicine of the future will be preventive. We will prevent all diseases, know what you will have. But besides knowing the diseases, you will also know where you come from. This is my paternal line in the last few centuries, as you can see, from Spain, mostly. But also I have some family ancestors from Asia, from Mongolia, and famous people related to my father, Genghis Khan. So no one mess around with me. This is my father lineage. And now my mother. As you can see, my mother, she also has Spain, Sweden, and France. And some famous people connected to my mother, Maria Antoinette, the Queen of France. So I have a very good background between Genghis Khan and Maria Antoinette. All of you will know it once you sequence your genome. And you will be able to verify for the first time if your father is really your father. But more interesting than looking into the past is looking into the future. And this is an experiment I did with one of my students. We shared genes. This is a theoretical experiment to see how our children could be, and then select the ones that we want. This will be a standard in 10 years. We will design our children. In fact, it is very sad that we are the last generation that has not been designed. All of us are here by mistake. We were not designed. In the future, we will design our children. And why also? Because we are very little genetically. The human genome is only 3 gigabytes of data, 3 gigabytes. Remember this? This pen drive is 1 terabyte, 1 terabyte. So how many humans can I fit in this terabyte? 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, so I can fit 333 humans and a little cat in this pen drive. And now we are beginning to understand the human genome and how we are made of and how diseases evolve. So now we have also not only reading, but writing genomes. This is called synthetic biology. We will be able to produce anything. In 2000, the first virus was artificially created. In 2010, the first artificial bacteria was created. But a virus is very small. Bacteria is a little bit bigger. It will take us time until we get to the 3 gigabytes of human data. But by 2045, we will be able to modify, to change, to improve the human genome. 15 years ago, I went to visit Sir Arthur C. Clarke, the famous author of Space Odyssey 2001 and many other books and then movies. And he's very famous. He was an engineer, by the way, but he became famous because of science fiction. He wrote the 3 laws of the future. First law, when a famous scientist says that something is possible, he is probably right. But when he says it is impossible, he's probably wrong. Second law, the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture past those limits into the impossible. And third law, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So we are going to see magic in the next few years. 30 years ago, personal computers were just beginning. In fact, 40 1 year ago, when I was at MIT, there were no personal computers. I wrote my first thesis at MIT on a primitive technology called typewriter. If you have seen those CACA technology existed, typewriters, until 40 years ago. Now we have computers, we have cell phones, we have incredible companies that are globalizing everything, Google, Facebook. What will happen in the next 10, 20 years? Incredible things. It will be magic to our eyes today. And the most important one has been the dream of humanity since the beginning. The first book ever written 5,000 years ago is the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia, and it is about immortality. Humans always wanted immortality, or most humans, but it was impossible. 5,000 years ago, then 4,000 years ago, the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead is also about immortality, but again, the pharaohs did not have the technology. And over 2,000 years ago, in China, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he wanted to be immortal also. That is why he built the terracotta army to protect him. But again, we did not have the technology still. 500 years ago, when Spain discovered the Americas, they were looking for the fountain of eternal youth. The dream was immortality, the fountain of eternal youth. Even religions talk about immortality. All religions talk about immortality. In the Bible, you can see the last enemy that shall be destroyed is death. And enemy, that's the word enemy. Now, in times of COVID, it is interesting to think about death because people have died. But you see, who are the people who die? It's the older people. The number one risk factor for dying of COVID is your age. COVID is an age-related disease. But COVID is a small pandemic. It's a very small pandemic in historic terms. The worst pandemic was the Black Death. It killed 1 out of every 4 Europeans. 1 out of every 4 Europeans would be dead if the Black Death was coming out now. So COVID is really nothing. COVID is a tiny pandemic. It's what I call a caca pandemic. But this caca pandemic paralyzed the planet for 2 years. While the big enemy is not really COVID. The big enemy is aging. Aging is the enemy. If we are old, we die of COVID and many other things. In fact, if you look at all the diseases, all of the diseases, influenza, cancer, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, the number one risk factor is your age. Your age. That is the problem. The problem is not cancer. The problem is not COVID. The problem is your age. And now, medicine is changing, and we are moving from sick care. We have sick care today. We just go after independent diseases. We will move now into really health care, where aging is at the center, because aging is now the mother of all diseases. We don't have to cure cancer or Alzheimer's. What we have to cure is aging. Once we cure aging, forget about Alzheimer's, forget about cancer. So aging is the enemy of humanity. And there are different life expectancies. Rats live 3 years, and mouse actually live 2 years. So we go from 2 years to a whale, for example, that lives 200 years. Why can a whale live 200 years? Of some clams, 500 years. Of sharks, 600 years. There are sharks with harpoons in their backs from the Middle Ages, alive. Why we have so many differences in life expectancy? Well, now that the genome has sequenced, we are understanding this. We are beginning for the first time to understand the biological basis of aging. So 5 years ago, a fantastic scientist from Cambridge University, David Wood, I also studied in Cambridge, but Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the USA, we decided to write a book about the biggest problem in humanity, which is aging and death. 90% of Serbians, 90% of Europeans die of age-related diseases, 90%. We don't die of accidents. Well, of course, we die of accidents and AIDS and sometimes malaria or homicides or suicides. But if you add all of those, they only represent 10% of the people dying in Europe. People die today of age-related diseases, which are three: cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and neurological diseases. 90% of Europeans die of that. So forget about wars, forget about terrorism, forget about climate change. That doesn't kill people. What kills people is aging. Aging is the enemy of humanity, of all of humanity. So we wrote a book about that. We are very proud that our book has become a global bestseller in a dozen languages and more. First in my mother tongue, in Spanish, then in Portuguese, then in French. For those of you who understand Russian, it is a major, major bestseller in Russia. In fact, it is in two different versions. They also changed the name in Russian. In Russian, it is more Russian. Instead of The Death of Death, it's called Death Must Die. Russian style, you know, Death Must Die. Now it's coming out in Chinese, Arabic, Persian, Italian, Czech, Hungarian, and I would love to publish it in Serbian so that Serbs also don't die. So if you are connected to a publishing house, I'll be happy. My goal is to have it in 25 languages next year. And in China, it is a major bestseller because China is experimenting a demographic implosion. The population of China is going to decrease from 1.45 billion people to only 720 million, only. That is half of the population. If you look at what is happening, China is going down to number 3 in the planet, according to the trends now. Of course, this will change because the Chinese are reading my book, and then they will not die. But this is how the population will look by the end of the century, according to the current trends today. Anyway, things will change because we are stopping aging. In Spain, this is a major issue because Spain has the second longest life expectancy among the big countries in the world, only after Japan. But now Spain will overtake Japan with the longest life expectancy. This is such a big issue in Spain. The average age in Spain is now 43 years. Women know that at 43, it is half to have children. Spain is a disappearing nation. Spain is disappearing. The population of Spain has been declining for 20 years, and it has only been compensated by immigration. Immigration from Eastern Europe, from North Africa, and from Latin America. The same is happening all over Western Europe. The population of Germany is not going down faster because of all the Turks moving to Germany, or the Arabs going to France, etc., etc., etc. So anyway, this is a big issue. So big that I created a movement in Spain, and I ran for the European Parliament. I was a candidate to the European Parliament in the last election in 2019 to talk about longevity. And I got 7,000 votes, which was incredible in Madrid, running for only 2 months. So this is becoming known today, that we have to stop aging. We have to control aging. We have to reverse aging. Because aging today, we think it's a disease, but a curable disease that we will cure in the next 20 years. In fact, in the last 20 years, we have been able to double the life expectancy of mice. We have mice that live double. A mouse lives like 2 years. We have mice that live now 4 years, double life expectancy. Mosquitoes that live 400 human years. Worms that live 1,000 human years. These are called the Methuselah worms. We have expanded their lifetime 10 times. Do you think scientists do this because they love worms? No, we do this because we learn so that we can extend our own lifespan. This has been in the last 20 years. What do you think we will do in the next 20 years? And remember, this is not linear. This is exponential. In the next 20 years, we are going to see more technological advances than in the last 200 years. In the next 2 decades, more advances than in the last 2 centuries. This is moving very, very fast. In fact, today we know that there are immortal cells, like cancer. There was one woman called Henrietta Lacks who was born in 1920, and she died in 1951 of cancer. The medical doctors studied the cancer, a huge pelvic cancer, cervical cancer, and they studied the cancer, and they saw that the cancer kept on growing. If it had food and water, it kept on growing. That cancer is alive today. She was born in 1920. Her cancer, which is alive and kicking very well, is 103 years old. It's over a century old, and it behaves like a teenager, reproducing every night, those cancer cells. We know since 1951 that cancer has discovered biological immortality, and most people are not aware of that. Let me ask you, you are an educated group of people, but I bet almost no one knew that cancer had already discovered immortality, if you can raise your hands. Most people don't know this, and we have known that since 1951. And I understand because we did not have the technology. Now we do. Now we can sequence the human genome, and we are identifying the mutations that stop aging in cancer. So we are discovering about immortality because of cancer. Cancer cells discover immortality, and they didn't go to university. They didn't take any courses at Napa, and they discovered immortality. We are 5 to 10 years of curing all cancers now, because of the incredible advances we are doing with genome sequencing. Also, now we know that there are two types of cells that are immortal. Cancer cells, which are bad, and germinal germ cells, which are good. All of us have germ cells. Germ cells in our bodies used for reproduction. They also do not age. But they die. When the body dies, they die, but they don't age. Like cancer cells. Cancer cells don't age, and they die when the organism dies, when the body dies. But so we know today we have the best cells for reproduction that do not age. And the worst cells, cancer, also that do not age. But we have learned even more things. There are small immortal organisms. We have discovered hydras, medusas, jellyfish that do not age, that are biologically immortal. Biology already created immortality. This is not a dream. This is not philosophy. This is not religion. Immortality already exists. And the proof is that there are immortal organisms and that there are immortal cells. In fact, the most beautiful thing is that the first life forms of the planet, which are round bacteria with circular chromosomes, do not age. Bacteria with circular chromosomes do not age. Life appeared to live, not to die. The goal of life is more life, better life, longer life. The goal is life is never to die. And then these bacteria, the first bacteria, are biologically immortal. So be careful the next time you clean your kitchen and you kill an immortal bacteria. They will not be happy because maybe they are 3 billion years old. Anyway, so when people tell me immortality is impossible, I say, how is it impossible? That was the purpose of life itself, immortality. A friend of mine, Aubrey de Grey, who wrote the prologue of my book, The Death of Death, he has been talking about this for 20 years. And he was called a charlatan, even by MIT, my alma mater. Technology Review, which is the magazine of MIT, called him a charlatan in 2005. Look at the big change of opinion in 2019. The cover of MIT Technology Review was, "Old age is over, if you want it." This is an incredible change of mentality of the top engineering school in the USA. From saying this was impossible to saying we are very close to cure aging forever. But why do we have this in our mind? Because as Arthur Schopenhauer said, all truth goes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. I want all of you to remember in the year 2045, when we will have cured aging. This is our goal, 2045. It can happen earlier, it can happen later, but around that time, we will have cured aging, and we will have reversed aging. We will be younger in the future. So actually, please, at the end, we take some pictures and keep those pictures to the year 2045. And look at them in 2045 and see, oh, see how I was old in the past. That is when I was old in the past. The goal is to reverse aging. The goal is to live indefinitely young for as long as you want. My friend Ray Kurzweil, the promoter of the singularity, in another book called Fantastic Voyage, Live Long Enough to Live Forever, he talks about the 3 bridges to immortality. The first bridge in the 2010s that just finished is to do the things that your mother told you. Eat well, sleep well, do some exercise, meditate, do not smoke, etc., etc. That is bridge 1, very basic. Now we are entering bridge 2, which is biotechnology in the 2020s. And then we will enter bridge 3 in the 2030s with nanotechnology and artificial intelligence. And that will take us into immortality, we hope, by the year 2045. In fact, he just sent me his latest book, which is called The Singularity is Nearer, and he keeps his dates, 2045 for biological rejuvenation. The idea is that there are 4 major technologies converging in the future. Nanotechnology that studies atoms, biotechnology studies cells, infotechnology studies bits, and cogno studies neurons. The 2 technologies on the top are the hardware of life. And the 2 technologies in the bottom are the software of life. And 2 major things will happen between 2029 and 2045. On the hardware side, on the top, by 2029 to 2030, we will reach what is called longevity escape velocity. That means that if we make it to 2030, we will gain 1 year per year, but still aging. But that will basically make us immortal because we will gain 1 year per year aging until 2045, when we will have rejuvenation technologies. So it doesn't matter how old we are when we get to this level because we will rejuvenate people. On the hardware side. On the software side, by 2029, we will pass what is called the Alan Turing test. Probably you are familiar. Alan Turing, he was the British scientist who said that soon we will not be able to know if we are talking to a human or to a machine. In fact, do you know if I am not a machine? By 2029, you will not know. You will not know if I am an artificial intelligence or a robot. Anyway, we will pass the Alan Turing test in 2029, and by 2045, we will reach the technological singularity, which is a global superintelligence which will be as powerful as all of humanity combined, as all the intelligence of all the humans in the planet. That's the singularity. Anyway, these ideas are being advanced now by all the tech companies because the technology companies are seeing that this is real and this is happening soon. So, for example, Google created a company 10 years ago called Calico, California Life Company, with the goal of solving death. Death is a technical problem, and death will have a technological solution. This is Google, but if you don't like Google, maybe you like Facebook, because Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, who is a medical doctor, who studied biology at Harvard, so she knows what she's talking about. They created the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative, their foundation, with the goal of curing all diseases in our lifetimes, all diseases, including aging. And they said something incredible. I was in San Francisco in the year 2013 when they created their foundation, and they said that their first child that was just born with the name of Maximum, that she would not die. How many parents can tell that to their children? At least that she will not die of aging. She might die of a broken heart or something else, but she will not die of aging. because we will cure aging in the next 2 decades. Anyway, if you don't like Google or you don't like Facebook, maybe you like Microsoft, because Microsoft says that we are solving cancer very soon. In the next 5 years, we will solve most cancers because we are sequencing, as I said, the genome of mutant cancer cells and comparing to good normal cells. And we will cure cancer very soon. But if you don't like Microsoft, maybe you like Apple. And Tim Cook said that Apple will be remembered by what they will do in health. If you have an iPhone, forget about that. That is nothing compared to what Apple will do. Or Amazon. Jeff Bezos just created the biggest company on rejuvenation called Altos Labs. He put $3 billion, you know, pocket money for him, $3 billion for biological rejuvenation, because he understands that this is real, this is scientific, and this is coming soon. And he's the wealthiest person in the world, together with Elon Musk. And he realized with $300 billion, putting $3 billion is only 1% of his fortune. That's nothing. But not only that, he realized it is not useful to be the wealthiest person in the cemetery. And we are very close to cure aging, and he doesn't want to die. But as opposed to the pharaohs who could not stop, now we have the science. This will be the biggest industry in the planet in the next 20 years. We are talking about trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars. This is not small. And the industry began with millions. Now it is in the order of billions. Soon it will be in the orders of trillions. On top of that, there is something which is very important for the economy. This is positive. This generates a financial super habit. Instead of a deficit, it creates a surplus of money, because right now we spend 80% of the health expenditures in the last 2 years of the life of the person. And the people still die after 80% of the medical expenditure. Isn't that horrible? 80% of the money goes and you die anyway. In the future, you will not die, you will not be sick, and this will create more money, not less money. For the people of the economy, you need to understand this is the most incredible thing that will happen. There will be lots of money when people don't age. This is called the longevity dividend. I just came back 2 weeks ago from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is opening to the world and is trying to change everything. They created the biggest foundation, $20 billion original endowment, and they announced the biggest prize in human history, $101 million to reverse aging by 2030, to reverse aging by at least 10 years by 2030, $101 million. And they will put more money because also they don't want to die, and they understood this is happening soon. And from there, I went to Dubai. Dubai has this incredible Museum of the Future, and I gave a talk there with 2 other scientists about welcome to everlasting life. To me, this is very interesting that even the Arab world is realizing that this is coming soon. 10 years ago, in 2012, there was a Japanese biologist called Shinya Yamanaka who got the Nobel Prize in Medicine in Sweden, where the Nobel Prizes in medicine are given. And he got the Nobel Prize for a small discovery. He rejuvenated a cell. He discovered that aging can be reversed, and he identified the genes that control aging. And you can become older if you want. I don't recommend it, but you can become younger indefinitely, and I do recommend that. If you want to get old and die, that's okay. Go ahead and die, no problem. But if you want to become younger for the first time in human history, we will do this in the next 20 years. In fact, last year, I invited him to Madrid, and we gave him the Nobel Prize of Spain in medicine for his huge discovery. Another friend from Harvard, he did his PhD at MIT, David Sinclair, he wrote a fantastic book about lifespan. I also recommend it. It's probably the second best book after mine in longevity. And he discovered that you can rejuvenate organs. His team at Harvard was the first team that rejuvenated eyes. The eyes are a small organ, easy to study, and they rejuvenated the eyes of mice that were about 80 human years old, equivalent to 20 years. These mice were blind at age 20. They had macular degeneration. And he rejuvenated the eyes of the mice so they could see again. Right now, they are doing this in monkeys because monkeys are very similar to humans. We are 99% equal, according to the genome. A mouse and us, we are only 90% equal, but a monkey, 99% equal. So this is happening soon. In 2 years, we will cure eye-related diseases. Anyway, so in the future, I plan to be younger because the goal is biological rejuvenation. And this is incredible. We are between the last mortal generation and the first immortal generation. This is an incredible time. This is the best time to be alive and to remain alive. So I plan to be younger in the future, but not through Russian applications like FaceApp that changes your age or anything. I plan to be younger because I work on biological rejuvenation. So we have to meditate about the future. The future is incredible, but many things to consider: economic issues, political issues, social issues. We have to consider all of this. And as the Chinese say, there is a lot of yin and yang. Everything has its dark side. And inside, yin-yang has little yin-yang. And little yin-yang has little yin-yang. So this is very complex. The Chinese also say, don't blame darkness. Let's light up the world. We are close to achieving the biggest dream of humanity since the beginning of history, immortality. So we need to look into the future. And in China, I love China. I lived 3 years in Japan, so I learned Chinese characters, and I went a lot to Japan, to China and to Korea. Because look at Korea. There are two Koreas. There is the Korea of the past, North Korea, the last country in the world without public internet. In fact, forget about internet. They don't even have electricity most of the day. And South Korea, the country with the best internet in Asia. So where do we want to go? Into the future, like South Korea, or into the past, like North Korea? So I want to finish with this beautiful phrase in Chinese. This word in Chinese means crisis, crisis. I learned how to draw Chinese characters, but first I did it upside down or sideways. Now I do it right. And this word in Chinese, Japanese and Korean, and even Vietnamese, when they use Chinese characters in Vietnam, means crisis. Crisis has two parts. The first part is danger, but the second part is opportunity. We are in front of the biggest opportunity of human history, for all of humanity together, and we have to think about the future. So, thank you very much.